Okay, I am live again. The Google did something crazy, or actually, it wasn't Google; it was Chrome. Well, same. And now we are going to get into this, even though it's a bit dated. It still gives the same. It's going to give you a sense of. We're gonna. It's what I have available. I think it's still gives some insight. These numbers are not exact now, but they will be relevant. Let's see, can I see it? Is it showing up? I have to test it. Elevate the numbers. So we're checking it out and wait in numbers, but elevate the numbers. So we have it here. This is a source from the U.S. Small Business Administration. Women in Business, 2006, from the Center of Women. Wow, there's an error there I didn't see. Center for Women, Women's Business Research, Nielsen Online, M. Barletta, Marketing to Women, R.A. Wagon, Organizational Diversity, Profits and Returns in U.S. Firms, jgalbraith.com/women in business. And that's Lori Webb. That's me. In 2015, I wrote this. From 2006 to 2015, this is Women in Numbers. It's Women's Entrepreneurship Day, or Tuesday was Tuesday, November 19th, Women's Entrepreneurship Day. Now, 91% say businesses do not understand their needs. 91% of women, that is, say that businesses do not understand their needs. What's the buying power of women? Well, when it comes to healthcare, 80% of women have the buying power. When it comes to household goods, 80% of the women have the buying power. When it comes to buying retail wine, when it comes to buying wine retail, 71% of women have the buying power. When it comes to buying new cars, new purchases of new cars, 60% of women have the buying power. When it comes to consumer electronics, 57% of women have the buying power. When it comes to used cars, 53% of women have the buying power. When it comes to decision-making power, well, actually said, I'm sorry, make the purchases. Now it's the buying power. All vacations, 92% of women make the decision of the vacation, of where the family will go on, or the couple will go on vacation. When it comes to purchasing a new home, 91% of women have the decision-making power. When it comes to consumer goods, 89% of women have the consumer electronic decision-making power, despite all the gaming, male-dominated, male-focused marketing and creation of products. 89% of women make the decision-making product. You have the decision-making power. And car purchases, 81% have the decision-making power and 95% have veto power. When it comes to home improvement, 80% of women have decision-making power regarding home improvements. When it comes to family investments, 53% of women have decision-making power. And that brings us to the resources again. Women in Business, 2006, Center for Women's Business Research, Nielsen Online, M. Barletta, Marketing to Women, R.A. Wiegand, Organizational Diversity, Profits and Returns in U.S. Firms, jgalbraith.com/women in business. So when I put this together using these resources, uh, I was looking at identifying basically, to see it's. I think in part I was looking into also the stats about women going into business and why there was a disconnect and not equity in terms of the amount of women who would start a business or the amount of women who would get funding for businesses or the amount of women who actually had decision making power over funding, uh, the amount of women who were distributing the funding, all of these things relevant. And actually, I'm sitting here these years later thinking about some of those actually to kind of prompt myself to look at these stats, this information, and do an update on this. This is living in LinkedIn, which ultimately bought SlideShare, which is the platform that I had created and uploaded this to all those years ago, and just left it up there because still just to keep it front of mind that it could be that many women don't feel that they have as much power as they realize they actually have. More importantly, that business owners, that the larger world is not identifying a really major opportunity to market to women, to create products for women, to consider women. Uh, that's a real big mistake, as they say in Pretty Women. uh, there are so many opportunities, and if we go, I'm gonna go through this again and break it down a little bit, and with my entrepreneurial brain, because this is just one aspect in the in the reading of the start us up nations, the US needs a new business plan that Jonathan Ortman's wrote about. They are also talking about the systematic issues of of limiting women's uh, the access for female access to revenue, to support in starting up ventures. And in going through this, even though the numbers are not, I mean, this is a bit antiquated, but research takes some time, and then forming it together, kind of piecing it together. It's hard to get access to the most current data. Uh, when I had done this, I don't actually even, I believe, when was it? Yep, in 2015, that a lot of the numbers were more indicative than they were exact. Even though I looked around and was trying to ensure that I wasn't spreading false information, and that I had something to kind of to be reliant upon, that the the information was credible, and that I could say what I said. And again, being indicative that so many, 91%, in my experience with women, knowing women, being a woman, I believe that this is to be true. Also, beside being a woman, being a experienced designer, having had worked in with usability and customer experience, and looking into how that whole system, how you would design something, or how you would uh, go about creating a product. And if you're making something for women, or aiming to influence their say in something, then you need it to be reflected in the product that you're creating, the service that you're creating, the experience that you're making, and the communication, the way that you're communicating. And this is specifically a presentation in honor or in connection to Global Entrepreneurship Week's uh, inclusion, to Women Entrepreneur Day. But if we take it a step further to talk about inclusion, we could flip the slides out with another several logos or several icons rather, that were, gender, a range in terms of how this could be more inclusive, including more than male, female, including minority, race, ethnicity, religion, uh, handicapableness. I think I made that word up, but I believe you understand what I mean. That people who are a range of things, um, because they're often ignored and they often have more power. Not these kind of numbers, but these numbers are relevant because 91%, if 91% of women say that businesses do not understand their needs, and you're out there and you're not hearing that, if you're not paying attention to that, if you're not listening to that, you are missing a lot of opportunity to create better products and services and experience, but also to uh, to get a higher ROI, or return on investment, for what you already offer. And with that, buying power. So what could that look like? Years ago, I also did it. Actually, it was just World Usability Day as well on the 14th. And years ago, I was on the the World Usability Day committee at large. I was one of the members of that committee and a part of organizing World Entrepreneurship Day around the world, and discussing theme. And one of the things we talked about healthcare, and I did a Ignite presentation, which is a take on Pakachika, which is a form of doing presentations. So you have 5 minutes and you have 20 slides, I believe. 20 slides, 5 minutes, rotates. Does that make sense? Every, is it right? 30 seconds. Well, that would be 1 minute per slot, one every two. Can't be that many. I'm not sure the numbers. I'll have to give you a reference for that at another point. But I did a presentation on healthcare trends a few years ago. And in looking at the direction we're going with healthcare, I believe that there is more attention to healthcare expenditures, or not healthcare offerings, and ways that just catering to female related healthcare, but also in the packaging, in the in the way that they do the commercials, in the marketing. I can see that there's been a shift, and it's reflected this 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 the buying power, however, not as greatly as it could. And what could you, as a budding entrepreneur, come up with that would be a good solution? what could be a interesting take on feminizing, feminizing, um, offerings within healthcare, whether it is the system of healthcare, if it is the actual, actual products within healthcare, at the way that healthcare is approached, um, the way it is, we educate people around healthcare. All of that is relevant, and it's important because also when you think about healthcare and you think about the number one killer, if I'm not mistaken, is actually heart attacks, contrary to what many people believe and what we hear about. Heart attacks kill more women than cancers and all kinds of other things. Heart attack is actually the number one. And I'm going to just check that information because I do not want to be lying to you. Also, it's really often misunderstood in women how the symptoms for a heart attack. Um, Women are more likely than men to have heart attack symptoms unrelated to the chest pain. So this is like a public service announcement now, but often women have neck or jaw or shoulder, upper back, or abdominal discomfort, and and a shortness of breath, pain in one or both arms, nausea or vomiting, sweating, lightheadedness or dizziness, unusual fatigue, indigestion. Yep, it says heart disease is the leading cause of death for women in the United States, killing 299,578 women in 2017. Also a little bit old. This is from the Women and Heart Disease from the CDC. Um, so that should be relatively legit. Anyway, about 1 in every 5 female deaths, about 1 in 16 white women, 6.1%, black women, 6.5%, Hispanic women, 6%, and about 1 in 30 Asian women, 3.2%. So I am more likely to have a heart attack than any other uh, uh, I want to say type of woman. That sounds crazy. Um, Women's group, women. What would one say? Anyway, yep. It's not really saying more about. It says it's the leading cause of death, but that whole idea of it's supposed to be. I think it's even combined, but of a group of certain things. But anyway, I digress. Let's get back to this and let's look at it from that entrepreneurial standpoint. Okay, if women have the buying power on household goods, I think this is one of the kind of stereotypical things that is not a big surprise to many people, especially going back to when when women were, kind of at home and caretaking of the home, not necessarily, usually picking out the drapes and, you know, the kitchen, the decoration and all that. That's like a stereotypical idea. It's now, basically updated with a lot of design savvy things or, the way that people consider what they want to have within their homes, that women are the ones who are going out and spending the money on. I think with that, the the stats say it. So if you are in a position and you're working within household goods, then I would suggest a way that you could make it more female friendly, considering it, make it accessible. Uh, so accessible, for example, for um, w- part of that demographic, which would be mothers with young children, mothers with with babies and carriages. So obviously considering the spacing in the aisles, so there's enough, that it's easy to maneuver. Also the spacing in the aisles because of the fact that even small children need the space, and they say that space is better because when people are too confined, then they start to walk into things. It is more challenging than if you have like a great deal of space. You don't have a tendency to walk from one side of the aisle to the other in the same way, kind of haphazardly losing your balance. But when you have like a narrower gap, it kind of feels like you're walking the tightrope, and so you like move back and forth to keep your balance. And the way so structuring the interior of, obviously a brick and mortar, but also if you are selling things online, how are you creating that experience? And when I interviewed Sydney Biddle Barrows, who is the probably one of the most famous former madams in the world, she and I discussed in depth experience economy, basically. And one of the things we talked about was how the way women shop is different than the way men shop, basically, and how putting items online, this is quite a few years ago. I think that interview was about 2010 with Sydney. And yeah, because the book came out in 2011. Exceptional Experience is the book that I wrote about Sydney, or based on the conversation that I did with Sydney. And it highlights 100 lessons that I learned from that interview, and extrapolating, kind of golden nuggets from a former madam may seem kind of strange for some people, but if you think about it, it is known to be the world's oldest profession. And if you want to be in that area and operate at the highest levels, then obviously things like discretion are critical. Things like managing, yeah, protection, safety from the way people might react, but also safety within, uh, you know, you know, safe sex, uh, things like how, the appearances and the communication and the protocol of sorts, the things that she did in her business to innovate around that age old business, I found extremely fascinating. And I mean, she was so business savvy that she did write a book, and that book was used in Harvard Business School, um, as a textbook in some of their courses on business and management. So the reason I brought that up is Sydney and I had an extensive conversation about shopping online. And at the time, you would go online, and, for example, one of the things we talked about were purses or pocketbooks, apparently, that we say in New York, that I just found out that that's why I say it. But you go to shop for a bag and a woman doesn't just typically, go online, look at a one-dimensional picture or two-dimensional picture and click on it and say, "Okay, I just want that." You want to look inside, you want to see what the lining is, you want to be able to turn it. Ideally, you want to be able to feel the texture. So in shopping online at that time, it was not, it wasn't mature enough. So the experience was less satisfying. And as the internet has, as the technology in general has grown, the way that we shop has caught up more to this, it replicates as closely as possible. On some sites they do a very good job of really giving you a feel for the item that you're purchasing, that you can twist and turn it from different angles, that you can zoom in and you can zoom out, and you can even, place it, since we are in household goods, uh, a way that entrepreneur considered, uh, an entrepreneur came up with this idea to be able to put your good, see your goods in your house, to imagine, instead of going to the shop and buying something or ordering something and trying to place it to find it doesn't fit, it's not a match, then you can virtually, create a space and plug in the item to see if it matches, if it looks the way that you think it should look. So yeah, that is about purchases. Retail wine, yeah, 71% women are drinking. uh, I don't know how that statistic compares to earlier years or how it compares to now. What do you think? Do you think that women buy more retail wine, or do you think they buy less in 2019? New cars and purchases, 60% of women have the buying power. The question is now, um, is there an opportunity, or do women buy cars in a different way? Do they buy a different type of car? And I'm thinking in terms of this is a totally sexist, to say that perhaps women buy cars that are more sustainable. Perhaps, I'm not sure. I haven't looked into the statistic, but the point of this little exercise is basically I'm doing a thinking out loud. I'm looking at this, reflecting on this presentation that I did Throwback Thursday on Tuesday. Uh, I I'm looking at it and I'm, basically giving you a little bit of a window into my brain, into how I begin to brainstorm about things or come up with ideas. I look at something and then I start to connect dots into how I might find it relevant, or it spearheads me to do further research on something. So it could be interesting to find out this information, and look into it also comparing it to 2019, and with the move towards being more sustainable or being more eco-friendly. uh, it'd be interesting to find out in terms of electric cars, or in terms of smaller cars, or you know faster, slower, more stable, steady cars. Somebody's got reports out there. Where are they? I want to know where they are. I want to see them. Next is the consumer electronics, which is super. At the time, I was a bit surprised because I was making the assumption that it would be more men than women that purchased consumer electronics. However, if you think about it, that's like, we're talking buying power, and their ability to buy, and probably often are in charge of buying, or think the way that women gift, to go out and purchase this for a loved one, for, you know, um, for whomever they're responsible to buy gifts for. But also, when you include in that the way the way we are using technology. There's so many, while there's still more male coders and people in male people males in engineering and in STEM areas, we are growing in leaps and bounds. And I don't know how that might hold true or untrue in your specific area, in your specific country, in your, you know, it would be also an interesting thing to find out. But using our smartphones, using the computer to design, using more cameras and video cameras. Yeah, you see a lot. I don't know the statistics about it, the updated version of it, but I would actually like to know. So chances are I will research this, and I don't know if I'm going to get back to you this week. Probably not, because there's not going to be any time. Used cars, women buying used cars, having the buying power anyway. Um, how does that look? How would that be an opportunity? Uh, Maybe in the way that used car lots are designed, and how the customer experience is designed, um, who's selling the car, the type of sale, all of those things could be looked at and tweaked to appeal to a more feminine, more yeah, to women, and ideally, let's be more inclusive in general, not just women. And the decision making power. So if women are making the decision making, are the ones who are deciding 92% of the time where the vacation is going to exist, then we know what that means. That means that you need to be crafting appropriate packages to suit the needs, suit the ideals, suit the aspirational um, goals, to accommodate uh, what would be within a woman's desire, needs, um, agenda, and craft that program and that marketing campaign. And also in terms of luggage, looking at luggage, designing maybe luggage that was more compact or easier to carry, as a rule. I think this is, again, I am kind of putting myself in an uncomfortable position for someone who wants to be as inclusive as possible in her thinking and in creating this network, and in creating and going out and wanting to interview entrepreneurs from around the world, because I wanted it to be more inclusive, the research, and wanted to show a, a better cross section, a better authentic view, a true view of what entrepreneurs look like in form of the diversity aspect. And it feels odd to be looking back at this presentation, which I felt like that before. I had already started working on the book, and have spoken about inclusion and diversity and why these things are important. But for the sake of this presentation, and which is going to be ending pretty soon, this is, yeah, it would be smart to create luggage that was more sized down or sized in a way or more aerodynamic for maybe a uh, lower center of gravity in some cases. You have a range because, of course, there's women of all heights. But if you look at a specific culture, a specific area, then you would look at the needs of 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 that group and see if it wouldn't be more relevant for it to be more lightweight and take into consideration what the needs are in terms of also what would women be traveling, why are they buying the luggage, and what are they most likely to be traveling with, what's going to be in that luggage, and how do you design the interior and exterior to reflect that. New home purchases, women, new homes. So when they're buying, the idea of, the single woman buying a home, because of the yeah, because before the in traditional sense, many years ago, you met someone, you got married, and you settled down, white picket fence, all of that. But now, women are creating their own houses and building their own white picket fences. And if you work in real estate, then how would you apply that? If you are working in construction, how would you apply that? What matters to these women? Again, I'm bringing up, is sustainability an important element? The way they're, how the inner climate is, uh, the what you're breathing, how what's being put into the house itself as it's being built, and what is the house decorated with, and how can you, um, how would that appeal to a feminine demographic? Yeah, how would that appeal to women? And the consumer electronics, we talked about that quite a bit earlier. And 89%, that's a lot of people. Car purchases and veto power. So actually in this video, I did pull a electric vehicle, and it's interesting that 95% would have veto power. I don't like this car, and get another one. I don't want you to have the Lamborghini. I don't know. And home improvement. Now that's really interesting, because I don't find that a lot of home improvement stores cater to women much, and I think that's a missed opportunity. For years, I've been following like this idea of Dare to Repair. I actually received that from my sister-in-law, a book called Dare to Repair with the Widgeter. That what's her name? The very famous, iconic, even Maggie the Widgeter. I don't know. Anyway, this I've always, liked building things. Being the youngest child, I was home alone with my mother, and I was the one who would, when she got a new stereo or got a new, you know, computer or anything like that, I was the one when I was with her to set those things up. I was the one who would, put together the furniture, or yeah, mainly put together new furniture. But yeah, that idea of having a toolkit, that there was a couple of offerings for women for a more female designed, women owned businesses, each one that created tools that were meant to be more ergonomically sound or more appropriate for a women's build, so that they could use that to advantage rather than having a big oversized hammer or screwdriver or whatever, and having to needlessly use muscle, because it's too cumbersome to work with. So that's home improvement. And then family investments, how you're using the money on healthcare, how you're using the money, in terms of writing the will, or, the estate, all those things related, things that are connected. I think that's fairly equitable, 53%. But again, I don't know how it stacks up now. And also, they're saying 53% now. Are we talking about women in bigender relationships, or um is it bigender when uh, I mean man and woman, male and female uh relationships, if it's women who are the head of the household because they're alone. It has an influence. It makes a difference, and it also makes a difference in the approach one would take in creating a product, service, or experience. So you can think about that. And that was that. So thank you for listening to that. As you can hear, I'm starting to fade fast. So I am going to um, go over here and go back to my screen. I hope it was shared and you enjoyed it. See, I'm leaning. Uh, what a long one. I'm going to put this on. I'm going to live monitor this until Gail gets back and takes over. And yeah, I'm going to just basically go out of this and put this on. See you. Hey, you're welcome to, by the way, connect. I am going to be checking, but I'm going to uh, go out of here for a minute, and then I'll be back, and then I'm not going to be coming on camera until I leave. So just so you know.